Welcome to Introscope. Today we will be going over primitive data types. So the definition of a primitive data type is a block that can be used to store specific types of values that can perform specific operations. So the four main types of primitive data types are ints, doubles, characters, and booleans. Integers are known as ints, and they can be used to store specific integer values, and they can be negative, they can be 0, and they can be positive. And so an example of initialization and declaration of an integer, so I can declare an int called apples that I can initialize it with a value of 6. So here I'm saying I'm assigning the value of 6 to apples, so there are 6 apples. We also have decimals, and they're known as doubles, and they can be used to store decimal values. So if we have a whole number and we don't want that to be an integer, we can use a double to store that whole number, and what ends up happening is the compiler automatically adds a decimal followed by 0. So an example of this could be I have a double and I declare it with the name cents, and I store a value of 60 to that variable into that variable, and what ends up happening is 60 becomes 60.0. We also have characters, and characters are known as denoted by char, and they can be used to store individual letter values. They are elements of strings which we will be covering later in the later videos. An example would be, let's say we want to store a letter grade, and that letter grade will be A. So we can declare a character called grade, and we can initialize it with a value of A by a single letter, and then we have the way you initialize characters is you want to add 2 apostrophes, one to the right and one to the left. Last but not least, we have booleans, and they can be used to store specific values, specifically true or false, and they can be used in conditions which we will be getting to later. An example of this could be, let's say we have a condition, we can assign this condition boolean variable with a value of true. So non-primitive data types are not as important besides strings and arrays. You don't have to focus on longs, but strings are basically a series of sentences which you can add on other variables such as integers, doubles, characters, Boolean expressions, which we'll be getting to later, and you can initialize strings through quotation marks. Longs are basically large integer values, but we do not have to really focus on longs. And we have arrays which we can use to store multiple elements. We will be getting to arrays in later videos. So now that we have covered this, I would highly recommend you to practice the Introscope. Go to visit the practice page on the Introscope platform in the YouTube channel and check out your understanding of primitive data types. We'll see you next time.